seats, I'll be engaging my guests on various topics about the cultural war in the immigrant home and how to intervene. My name is Dr. Cynthia Adom-Potufi. I will be your host for the show, and you are watching Battleground. In this episode, we look at a very important topic, which is mental health in the immigrant home. And I have an amazing panelist, wonderful young women and men, to dive into this topic with me. So at this point, I would love for them to introduce themselves. You can start from anywhere, maybe from my right or from my left.
All right, I'll start. Hi, my name is Priscilla. I'm 23 and I'm from Brooklyn.
Hi, my name is Persis. I'm 20 and I'm from the Bronx.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I'm 20 and I'm from Brooklyn.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm 21 and I'm from the Bronx.
Thank you. So we have a bunch of Brooklyn and Bronx guys and ladies. Welcome again to the Battleground. So let's just go straight into the conversation. Growing up in an African home or in an immigrant home, how has mental health been treated, or how have your parents treated or dealt with mental health in your home compared to, let's say, mainstream America? Like you have friends who are white or Asian or non-Africans or non-immigrants. How is mental health handled in your home? And it doesn't have to be your home. It could be your friend's home or anything, how the narrative has been for you in any African or immigrant home.
I think I can start. In terms of my home specifically, based on my experience, mental health wasn't like the go-to or the topic of conversation in the house. It was, even if we were sad or, stressed, a lot of it was remedied with like the Bible or prayer. So that was the go-to in terms of mental health, but there was nothing as sort of, addressing anxiety or depression directly in those terms. But compared to like my other counterparts who are not African or who were not in my home, in terms of, that wasn't the main like focus or the main conversation.
Oh, that's interesting. Isn't it true though? Prayer is the key, right?
Yeah, prayer is the key.
Oh, well, I'm just being sarcastic here, but seriously speaking, prayer is the key. We know prayer is the key, but as you said, mental health goes beyond prayer, goes beyond the Bible, right? So I'd like to hear from any of my panelists, maybe Persis or Andrew, whoever wants to go, Manny.
Yeah, just to add on to what you said, I feel like growing up in an immigrant home, in my home myself, I don't think mental health is something that we discuss or something that we would say is something that we actually pay attention to. I feel like it's more about we don't really discuss problems and kind of just push it under the rug. Something happens, kind of we'll get through it. But there's never a time where we can actually talk about things like depression or anxiety or those type of things. It's kind of just kick it under the rug and keep going.
Wow. When you say it's a topic that we never talk about, are you referring to you and your parents, or you and your peers, you and your siblings? How does it look like?
For me personally, I would say I've never had a conversation about mental with my parents personally, but I feel like most immigrant or Ghanaian, at least children growing up in a Ghanaian home, can relate to that. Whereas we don't really have a conversation about, are you depressed or are you going through anxiety? I don't really think it's kind of they kind of teach you to be strong. Don't never put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable.
Don't act like a baby.
Don't act like a baby, stuff like that. So I feel like with that, it's not like a real topic. There's no time for that.
Wow.
To say.
Wow, that's something. It's not an important topic. It's not something to be considered. So what are some of the topics that you think our parents are more interested in, and why you think that's why they shelve mental health issues under the carpet? And we talk about why they think so, the way they think, but I just want to know from you all what areas that they think are more important to them or to the family.
Education. I didn't bring you here so you come live under my roof forever. Education is like the top thing. Even till today, I hear it. Education. Make sure you spend that time and sacrifice to get the best of what America has to offer. And I think that is the main priority for our parents, not in a malicious way, but because that's how they were grown up, you know. Mental health was like, and if I'm wrong, you know, anyone can speak on this, but mental health was not the center or the focus when they were in Ghana. Like, self-esteem and all these things were not brought to their attention. So now we're here, and they're bringing those same principles that they've learned and like kind of like trying to guide us in that same path. So education, I can say, is the same.
Education
And food.
Yeah, food, I know. Yeah, African food is good. Yeah. Any other perspective besides education?
The thing on what Priscilla was saying, I feel like a lot of our parents are kind of, their goal is for their children to succeed. Them bringing the children to America with the idealistic that America has so many opportunities and just so many things to offer them and just so many pathways to the overall goal of success, I think is what they're focused on. They don't really, like, just the idea of succeeding is just what they're focused on, and they don't think that, like, or they just don't have time to factor in the stressors of what success can look like and how stressful that pathway can seem to other individuals in their own personal way.
Isn't it interesting that you mentioned our parents are interested in our success, and we also want to be successful, right? So does it mean the way they perceive success or see success is completely different from the way we see success? Because I want to believe that whether you're successful or not, it also depends on the status or the nature of your mental health, right? So can we throw light a little bit on that? They want us to be successful, but they don't want to talk about mental health. So just imagine you're in medical school, you are getting the grades and all that, but you are suffering from anxiety. You are literally hanging on a thread. Like, you know what you're going through and they don't want to admit it. So how do we reconcile these two, you know what I mean, like contradictory, worlds or statements?
I think mental health is just known as a taboo altogether. Like, for example, like if you're not working, right? So what is there to be anxious about, right?
Oh,
so I
my
think
goodness.
I think bridging the gap between, like, okay, for them, right? For them, it's okay, us being successful, like, financially and also like education wise. But like, I don't think they understand that also for us, like, our mental health is also important. So I think having that conversation is like the first step, but that's also.
Oh wow, that's also for them the last
Right.
step, or never, right? I think it's good we're having this conversation because in the book that we wrote, Two Worlds as Well, one thing we mentioned in one of the chapters is that actually the goal of young people and parents is literally the same. For us to be successful in America or in the United Kingdom, wherever we find ourselves, but the path to the success may differ a little bit, or the way we see success is what is different. It doesn't mean each other's perspective is wrong. It just means that we are seeing things differently, and we have to find ways of coming together to understand each other. So the next area I want us to touch on is this is the world that we find ourselves in. We don't go to the area of mental health. We don't even talk about it. If you say you're depressed, it's like you're acting out. What's wrong with you? Like, what are the problems? I cook for you. I give you food. You are in college. You are this. Go to Ghana and say. Go to Nigeria and say. Like, you guys don't even know what you're talking about. So, you are in that world, and then you are literally plugged out, and then you go to college. You are all college. You're all in college. How was that for you? I mean, I don't know. I think we are in different phases of college, but how was it for you transitioning from home to college?
I think personally for me, especially in terms of like awareness, I think the difference, especially between parents and just people our age, is just awareness. Because when we go to schools or just our culture in general, we're more of a reflective generation, or
right.
We live in a more reflective culture.
Right.
Like, okay, why am I like this, and what is causing me to be this way? In Ghana, when our parents were there, that wasn't the focus. Self-reflection was not something that was a part of their lifestyle. So when we go to college, especially college where we have this woke season where you're getting different ideas from different professors and different classmates, you're aware of more things, and you say, whoa, I can identify with that. And then you bring it home and try to relate to your parents, but what are you talking about? So I think that's where the understanding gap is. You go to college and you perceive all these ideas, but that's foreign to our parents, completely. So
that's deep. That's something. And I think that is why college, the college season is the most difficult. If I don't want to exaggerate, other stages are also difficult, like preteen, etc. But I think college is difficult because, as you mentioned, there's awareness. Yeah. It could even be that you're abused, you didn't even realize you were being abused. Yeah. So let me tell you something funny. Somebody called and she was like, I started reading your book, and until I read the book, I never knew I have been so abused. Not in so many areas, in so many ways. Verbally, I didn't even know, I didn't even realize it. So that awareness also brings its own weight, like some pain. It's like, that's why I wasn't even understanding what is going on. Now I understand why you are doing this, but I still don't get it. So then you go to college. How do you deal with mental health issues? Now you become more aware. Maybe I didn't really understand. I was in high school. I mean, maybe that's how they are. That's how my parents are. That's how life should be. But you go to college and realize life shouldn't be this way. It can be better. So how do you then progress from there? Because mom hasn't changed. Daddy hasn't changed. So how do you survive? I'm being drastic here, but let's just be real. How do you survive? Because some people, it's literally hard for them to survive because of the challenge that they have to go through.
I think it's important for you to just kind of educate yourself and just educate maybe your siblings or your parents. I know for me personally, when I went to school, I majored in psychology. So as I was learning about all these different things that I wasn't really exposed to growing up, I would bring it back to my home and I would just have conversations and or start family meetings just have different ways for us to kind of express what's going on within our household or outside our household. But just to bring it back to yourself and figuring out how to survive. I think it's important to just understand the type of person you are and how you want to be or how you want to be perceived by the world, and just making sure that you're learning how to love yourself, because I think that's something that we don't really learn growing up. You just learn how to survive, but you don't learn how to love yourself. Wow. So I think that's really important.
We learn how to survive, but we don't learn how to love ourselves. But how far can you go with survival? You want to live, right? You don't necessarily have to or want to just survive, because survival is not enough. In some instances, survival will not cut it. You need to love yourself and love life. Thank you so much, Mommy, for that. So then, in some homes, Mommy mentioned that she could bring her college stuff, like awareness, new knowledge, whatever you call it, to the dropout, like to the family meeting, and then have conversations around it. And I saw Festus was nodding. Did you have the similar experience?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have the dynamic with my mother whereby, like, I can just, like, present to her, like,
that's
what's
beautiful.
going on, because, like, sometimes, like, she has her other friends who's not as open with her children. So, like, when we let her know, like, this is what's going on, like, people who have anxiety, people who have depression, all these things. She has, like, a prayer line that she, like, goes on or whatever, and she presents it to them. So I think that, so I agree with, like, the way Mom makes.
So besides going on the prayer line to pray for you all, you know how I'm going with that, right?
Yeah.
You talk about it too, right?
Right. We have conversations.
That's good. So, I mean, I think this conversation is I like it a lot, because I know in some homes, young people are struggling to have conversations with their parents. But from this panel, you realize that some parents are trying. Not that others are better than other parents, but I think it's just the awareness. And, like, some parents may be more exposed than others. I'm adding this in for young people to know that there's hope. Some young people, the way they talk about some of these, dynamics in immigrant homes, as if the problem can never be resolved. And I feel like if we all agree that with the help of God, this problem can be resolved, it goes a long way to help. That's the first step in resolution. But if we've just blocked our minds and the counseling generation, like we counseled you out, there's nothing, then it means that nothing can happen, right? But this conversation even shows that at least there's hope. Some parents may be difficult to convince, but others are ready to dialogue with us. And I believe even those that are difficult to convince is gradual. And so the next question I wanted to ask is, how do you handle parents who are like Mommy's parents? You would bring your information at home and they'll just dump you somewhere and say, I don't even want to say what I want to say, but like, just take whatever you're talking about. Like, I don't even want to hear it. How do you handle such parents? Or what advice do you give to young people and even parents who kind of have that posture?
I would say when it comes to something like that, I feel like one of the things that tends to happen is that like most of the times the same problems that we identify in our parents, we have the same problems because
That's true.
we develop the same traits that they have. So most of the time, if it's like pride and stuff like that, it's kind of in us, or it's kind of in us by nature because of our parents. So I feel like most of the times you have to kind of be the change that you want to see in your parents.
Right.
And like if your
I
parents
like
are doing,
that.
if your parents are doing stuff that you feel like you don't agree with, it's up to you to be a bigger person because I feel like over time they will start to respect and see that you're different, and then the way they approach you will be completely different.
Wow.
So I feel like most of the time, because like most of the times if you come from a home where like your parents don't like to be transparent about things, you have to bring that transparency into the house.
Wow.
And you have to be able to say when you're wrong. And I feel like over time they're gonna begin to respect that in you. But in most cases, I feel like we are the same problem. It's kind of like two fires in the same house.
That's true.
So if one person doesn't want to come down, it's gonna be like the same thing going on over and over again. And then we see a repetitive thing, and then sometimes we don't assess ourselves.
Right. Wow.
We see things in our parents that we hate, but then over time we become the same people, and we do the same thing to our kids. So I feel like it comes to a point where you have to have a self-assessment and start to confront the evils that you see in yourself.
Wow.
That's the only way you'll be able to break the cycle from continuing into even you and your own kids and your grandkids and stuff like that.
Building on what Andrew was saying, I think it's also important for us to remember that our parents came from generations of not speaking about mental health, and we're in a new generation where we're like, okay, like, we're being taught this in school. Our friends are having conversations about this. We have social media where we can learn about it. So I think it's also important to remember the differences, but to also not be discouraged because, of course, once you go to your parent talking about, okay, I think along the line I may have been depressed or whatever the case may be, and they may write you off or whatever the case may be. You may want to feel discouraged, or you may want to just be like, okay, I'm never going to talk about this again. But I think it's important to just continue, like Andrew was saying, just continue making sure that you're being at your best so that along the way change will happen.
Right. Along the way change will happen. Along the way. Some way, somehow. You want it or want it, don't give up on that. Because they are not used to it. They are terrified. When they hear that the word depression or suicide, oh my God, they go nuts. Like, my child is going to die. Something is going to happen to my child. And that is out of love. And if we understand them from that empathetic posture, then it helps to, be patient and go back. Maybe I was talking to a young person. He was like, I tried to tell my mom, Mommy, I love you. And said my mom asked me, why? And since then, I've decided never to tell her I love you again. I'm like, she was confused. Maybe she thought you needed something from hers. But the point I'm trying to make here is that as we've all have chimed in, if if at first you don't succeed, try again. Let's go back, hone down on it, go back, be patient with them, knowing that they also have to unlearn certain things. And it doesn't take one conversation. It doesn't take, even two conversations. Sometimes it's years, like months. And gradually, and Andy mentioned something that if you start seeing things differently and talking to them differently, they'll start respecting you. And African parents, they won't admit it, but they've admitted it in their brain. Like, my child is growing up. Like, they won't tell you, you're getting smarter and, better, but they know it, within them, they know it. as we wrap up, let me ask this final question. So, as we say here, we are all college students. Assuming magically, or the Holy Spirit just turn things around, and you turn 46, or 48, or maybe 45, all of a sudden, right? You become a parent. Maybe you have a teen child. How would you, number one, and you could address it from different perspectives, how would you address, mental health with your child? What advice would you give your child whilst they're going to college, or if they are still in college? And how would you yourself approach mental health in your home?
I think one thing is just making sure that for me, my child, having that relationship where, like Richard said, like it's an open relationship where you can come to me, because that's the first part, like having that conversation in the first place. And as a parent in the future, I want to be more purposeful in being quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to assume, because I think right now what our generation wants is just someone to hear them out.
That's right.
I think that's even a powerful step, even though it seems small. It's such a powerful thing to just listen rather than just speak and try to label whatever you think is correct. But I think that's a really powerful first start, and then from there it can progress to just being more aware and having that open conversation about mental health. So that's
the key thing is open conversation.
Yeah.
Keeping the lines open. Thank you so much. Let's go next.
Just to add to what Split said, I feel like the big part is having that open relationship with your child. I feel like another thing that I'll do is that be open about the mistakes that I've made before. Because I feel like, especially in this generation, I feel like most parents do not talk to their kids about some of the mistakes they made when they were growing up. It doesn't come out. They make us think like they've been on the straight out their whole life.
Yes.
So what it does is that when you start seeing certain things, it kind of brings resentment, because it's like, and I've seen it in many of my friends' relationships with their parents. So it's like, I feel like one key thing is to have that, like, be okay. And I always thought it was always easy to do that, but like I have a younger sister, and we're 10 years apart. So that's kind of like the first hand-on-hand experience I've had with like a child and a kind of an adult.
Right.
So I realize it's not that easy to be transparent.
Exactly.
Like as easy as we may think it is. So I feel like one of the key things is also to learn to be transparent, because I feel like the only way a child will come to you is if you're open with them when you're wrong, or when you're able to relate with them. You're able to tell them that, yo, I made this mistake, and this is why I don't want you to do this, and be in detail about the mistakes that you've made. That way they'll feel comfortable coming out to you. They won't feel like you're going to condemn them or judge them based on the things that they've done or what they've made mistakes in their lives.
Communication, open and honest communication and transparency. And that's really, really important, and that's true. One of the programs, like, we were invited, and as we were talking, one question that came in was, so all of our parents act as if they were virgins when they were getting married, like they were all first in class and everything. But then you hear that, like, daddy has a son in Ghana, like mommy has what happened? Like, did they turn into Virgin Mary, like, and all that? But that's just by the way. I think, I agree, as parents, we have to be transparent. And I, for one, I tell parents, when anywhere I share experiences with parents, I tell them, in Ghana or in Nigeria, Africa, the definition of respect was connected to what? You being like, okay, perfect, covering up and everything. But in this country, I tell them it's transparency. So I'm like, if you're covering up, what you're telling your kid is something different. And you think they've shut their mouth, they're in their room, they don't respect you so much as they should. But if you're transparent, they honor you because they know you're being honest with them. And for them, when you say that, it's like, whoa, if that's what it is, then I'm going to be transparent. It's just that they think the only way kids can respect them is when they see them as angels and mini-gods. And so it's just like educating more and more for them to know. And I'm like, I'm not shy to cry in front of my child. If I do something wrong, I'm like, I'm so sorry, forgive me. She'll be crying, I'll be crying too, and I'll be hugging her. I was a little mean and all that. And then we move on. Next time, if she has any issues, she will feel comfortable. She knows I'm vulnerable, and she can come to me. Let's go on.
I think it's also important to just spend quality time to build those relationships that cause children to be open. I feel like as adults, a lot of, you may be engulfed with like work or church duties or whatever the case may be. And sometimes you may forget that your children may need the same attention that you give to other things. So I think improving quality time, and maybe not just doing the things that you like to do.
Right.
You see your kid likes to skateboard, so maybe we're gonna go to a skate park today. Maybe you can teach me how to skate, or just different things that can you're interested in your child, but then your child can also be interested in you, so that open relationship can be manifested.
Quality time. And before I let Pastor speak, I think throwing it around and also talking to the younger generation to also be interested in what their parents do, right? Spend time on WhatsApp with them. Like, I found this funny video. Mommy, that's cute. That's interesting. Like, you're not even really. So I think it goes both ways. That's all that I wanted to mention. Yeah.
I would just like agree with everyone like basically said. I think also like spending quality time, and also like for me and my mother, like I said, we could have like a mother-daughter date where like we talk about like real issues. And like one thing I would tell my child is like I would want them to be in tune with what they're feeling. So like if something made them feel some kind of way, like maybe a little later we can talk about it. I think definitely, that can also. That's
amazing. Thank you so much. And I think the last thing I would like to say is that if your mom and dad, you're listening in, I want you to, we want you to know this. Number one, that there's room for prayer, and there's room for what? Going to the hospital or seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor. And see if your child comes to you, they're going through any emotional stresses. It could be that they just need a listening ear to hear you, to hear them out. It could also be that they need to be seen by a specialist. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like you're sick, you go to the hospital, they give you medication for blood pressure, and all of that. In the same way, it could be that your child may be going through some emotional stresses. Please, let's not spiritualize, over-spiritualize, and demonize everything mental health, because that could be hurting our young people. And as a young person, please don't give up on your parents, okay? They mean well, so let's try and keep the conversation going. Keep the conversation line open. And with that understanding, we know that some way, somehow, surely, slowly, we will get there. Thank you so much. God bless you for another great time on Battleground.